Hello and welcome to Pop Screen, part of the Geek Show podcast network. We are that corner of the Geek Show that likes to look at the good, the bad and the bewildering of movies either starring, about or by pop stars. No, the podcast covers such a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a filmmaker and a writer for thegeekshow.co.uk and horrified.com. I've been joined this week by...
Mark Harrison, I'm a writer and occasional quizmaster at Film Stories magazine, Vodseller and Yahoo.
Indeed, the quizzing is going well, isn't it?
I would say so. Yeah, it's fairly weekly, that. There's other things to talk about with that. There's a podcast coming up soon that hopefully will be episodes. But for today, Bula, Graham, Bula.
Bula, Mark. Yes, we like to think of ourselves at Pop Screen as a revolutionary podcast. We've never supported the status quo, and we're not about to start now. Because yes, where did you first hear about this film, Mark?
Well, today's film is an odd one. It's just sort of existed as an object of morbid fascination ever since it came out in cinemas back in 2013, at the height of summer 2013, in fact. What is it, is my question. And I brought it to you because I don't think you'd heard of this before. I suggested it for the show. But
no, I wasn't familiar with this.
No, so I suggested it to you because it sort of seems in your wheelhouse, and I'd be curious throughout this episode to find out if this is the worst film you've ever covered for this, or if it's just kind of about level for pop star movies.
Can I shock you? I think it's the best. I think The Man Who Fell to Earth looks like dog shit compared to this.
The best 1-star movie. So what is the film, Graham?
The film is Bula Quo, which it stars Rick Parfitt, Francis Rossi, and John Rhino Edwards, who is Status Quo's bassist and not, as I initially assumed, one of the gladiators.
I thought that too. I was looking all the way through for Rhino.
And it stars them as they get mixed up with gangsters on a tour of Fiji. I think it's one of those films where the story is both very simple and weirdly hard to pin down because it's built on so many assumptions about, what Fiji is for a start, that you sometimes can't follow it.
I mean, it starts with a nice. What if this was a year before Paul King's Paddington came out, but it sort of starts with a Paddington-style newsreel to set the scene. But it just answers the question: what if Paddington was nice and racist, like right from the get-go? What if we dressed up Rick Parfitt and Francis Rossi as doing a bit of the old colonialism in Fiji, going there as hunters, bothering the native people who are all cannibals, as guest star villain John Lovitz tells us in narration. And will this ever come up again? Nope. No. I mean, it's just the start of a thing where they've wrote bits, anything about Fiji in this, they've wrote with like 12 tabs open on Wikipedia. And maybe a few other websites as well.
But it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean,
it's a heck of a racket.
I don't want that cannibal strand to come back. I don't. For the avoidance of doubt, I don't think the film would be better if it had a scene where Francis Rossi and Rick Parfitt were stuck in a big pot going, well, that's another fine mess you've got me into. But it is a weird thing to just bring up and drop entirely.
Well, there's tons of that. It's the whole first 10 minutes of the film before the plot starts really shows up how plotless the entire thing is going to be. But there's at least the pretense of a plot. Like in the opening, you have that newsreel style thing. You have a bit where there's a pirate radio presenter doing, as pirate radio stations do, saying, we're pirate radio from the beach, just so you know where we are. If you're worried about the pirate radio thing, excited to the status quo are performing here. And there's a really contrived bit where Rick Parfitt appears to have died at the beginning, which is awkward now looking at it. almost 10 years on now. But there's an opening skit that's more or less just a holiday video of the
Yes.
band fucking about, not for the last time in the film, where Rick Parfitt jumps like 10 feet from a waterfall, and his people, his crew, his manager and minder, played by Craig Fairbrass, is like calling the local press saying Rick Parfitt is dead. It's like, what? So he stood right there in the cell. No, this will be great press. It's like, will it? Okay.
Yeah,
I
I've
mean,
got to think it's going to hit your earnings pretty hard if people think you are dead.
yeah. Well, I mean, so it goes from that, to this pirate radio guy reporting, exclusively, Rick Parfitt's died. Maybe they'll need someone in the band. And it's like, okay, so this guy wants to be in the band. We never see him again. We never see that character
No.
again in this film. We don't really see many Fijian characters full stop in this film. It's more just a fuck about for these two wandering about.
It's just to go back to that opening montage. I once saw the film. I think it was Bill Paxton's first film made when he was a student, called Taking Tiger Mountain, where part of it was edited when one of the directors got high on mushrooms, threw the film clippings in the air, and edited them according to where they fell. Um, and that opening montage of Bula is still the most incoherent montage I've ever seen in a film.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's fully just holiday videos. A lot of the film just seems like a massive racket. Once it does get into a plot, it's sort of going for the deer hunter, but it's just not very deer, is it? It's just sort of cheap. It's more the tax break hunter, but there's just such lifeless acting, lifeless wooden acting, and that's just from the actors in the film. Honestly, I think Rick Parfitt and Francis Rossi acquit themselves quite well here, because they don't have the million-yard stare of professional actors going, "I'm in Bula Quo." I'm in the status quo movie, Bula Quo. It's
Well, should we talk about some of those professional actors? Because you mentioned Craig Fairbrass and John Lovitz. I
yeah.
mean, Lovitz will always have a certain degree of my affections for, I mean, three things. The opening scene to Happiness by Todd
Mm.
Solondz, his string of incredible Simpsons guest appearances, which many critics have said were enjoyed by all. And the fact that he beat up Andy Dick, which I think is something that we all fantasize about doing from time to time.
You sure did. Fucked around and found out, made some comments about the Phil Hartman debacle.
Yes.
But yeah, that happened. But Lovitz in this is not a wig. Lovitz is a little medicated in order to get through the film, possibly. it's I mean,
Yes.
maybe he's just enjoying the whole day as much as anyone is in the film. To be fair, it's not necessarily that. That's. I mean, it's tough to know where to begin with Bulako. As I say, it's weird that the actors are the most wooden actors in it. But I would, while we're talking about the actors, I would say Craig Fairbrass does all right in this. I would say that
Yeah.
this is not a canon that I massively follow along. But I think
Yeah.
that in the scheme of Bula Quo,
Hmm.
if you want someone to like go to war with a local police department and then give a speech about Vietnam, then you get Sylvester Stallone. If you want someone to do like the balletic, martial arts, but with a frown with regret behind it, you get Jason Statham. If you want someone convincingly beat a man into unconsciousness with a flip flop, you get Craig Fairbrass, and he will sell the hell out of it. Doesn't matter that he's in Bulacor. There's 100% commitment here with what he's given. Big shout out to Craig Fairbrass, frankly, for this film.
Craig Fairbrass is someone who I'd seen, like, I was aware when I was a kid of his early TV credits in things like London's Burning. He seems to specialize in in straight to DVD action movies with titles that make you go, that's not a word. He's appeared in Vikingdom, not a word, and Avengement, also not a word. He got a certain degree of attention a couple of years back for starring in. Did you ever see that film Muscle?
No, but I did hear he was good in it. Yeah.
Yeah. He got a lot of good reviews for that, and it was not. They weren't good reviews that said, "Wow, who knew he was capable of this?" They were good reviews that said, "Oh, finally, he's got something that he can shine in." And I think when you look at his performance in Bula, you can see that because he is doing a better job maintaining his dignity
Yeah.
than anyone else in this film.
Yeah, in a film, I would say that it's kind of hard to be good in. Outside of
Exactly.
outside of Lovitz and Fairbrass, though, do you know that Laurie Aikman, who plays the intern, Matt Kennard, who plays the sort of like roving reporter who's sort of escaped from the ABBA movie, and Gene Hurd, who's also the screenwriter, and the terrible journalist who's kind of chasing the scoop that status quo is still alive. Status quo is still scooping. They're all. What connects them, other than being in this film, is they're all family. Gene Hurd is Laura Aikman's mother, I believe, and Matt Kennedy is married to Laura Aikman in real life. So just
Right.
adding to the vibe that you're watching someone's holiday videos with this film. There's a lot of the cast are
Yes.
related.
I did not know that. I did look up Laura Aikman because I had like a sort of tickle in the back of my brain saying, I've seen you somewhere before, I've seen you somewhere before.
Hmm.
And then I realised that, like me, she has survived Keith Lemon, the film.
Yeah, that is where I knew her from, regretfully, and that's all I want to say on Keith Lemon the film. A worse film than this one.
It is. And I don't like admitting that I've watched it, but sometimes it's like when you're a kid and they tell you to absolutely not put your hand on that stove.
Hmm.
You're going to do it, right?
Yeah, it was. It was one of those films I saw. That was one of those films I saw in the cinema, and then just had to stay all the way through it. I couldn't let it beat me. You know what I mean? I'm not going to walk out with Keith Lemon the film, and guess what? I'm an idiot. I should have gone, but this one was the first time watch. As I say, just object of morbid fascination for me, and
Mm,
I have to say it was everything I expected it would be. It's just weirdly, the holiday video thing. The opening just goes from Donkey Trail to Waterfalls to the Radisson Hotel. You will see the Radisson Hotel logos, and all of the resorts they go to
yes.
will be amply advertised throughout. You have a plot in the first half of the film, which, while we're talking about The Simpsons, is sort of the Poochie rules of screen time. Literally every moment that Rick and Francis are not on screen, all of the other characters are saying, "Where are Rick and Francis?" So, right down to, I mentioned Gene Hurd's character, the terrible news reporter, and I say it's fair to say she's a terrible journalist. Like the bits that pop up throughout the film, they don't seem to be satirical. They seem very straightforwardly Fiji News.
Yes.
Yeah, Fiji News is reporting status quo are still here. Status quo are doing this. It's like, good God, there's so little going on in Fiji. But then also when confronted with the revelation that there's a Russian roulette, there's a gambling ring going on, on all of legal killings and all this kind of stuff. She's like, would the world be interested after spending 45 minutes talking about an English rock band being alive or not alive? It's not. I mean, it's a thing where the bar is like low for this one. It's reflected in all of the reception to it. Like nobody expected Bula Quo to be anything more than Bula Quo. It's like it's sending itself up. It's like, is it though? It does lines like, where they're talking about the band and someone says they make a gag about zombies, and a local says in Fiji the undead are a serious problem. And Fairbrass replies, in Fiji, Rick and Francis are a serious problem. It's like, there's no dots connected between that. I don't think
Yep.
that. I don't, you mean that in the way you
Shape
mean
of a
that.
gag, but not a gag.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. The, it's also the first example I've seen in ages of an old-fashioned rock band caper comedy. I
Oh,
mean, I
yeah.
don't want to mention this thing in the same breath as A Hard Day's Night,
Hmm.
but that's where the form comes from. And one of the big revelations that I got from doing this podcast is that Spice World
Hmm.
killed those movies stone dead. After Spice World, no one wanted to make another one of them.
Yeah.
So it's perplexing to see this, where it's like Status Quo are far from the only band of their generation who've starred in a loosely plotted globe-trotting caper comedy.
Hmm.
but they are the first to do it just after their 50th anniversary as a band.
Yeah, this is the kind of 50th anniversary celebrations, which I suppose puts them a little bit kind of like the peak of their profile, I suppose, in the 70s and stuff. It puts it after stuff like Help, which is the thing I thought of more than A Hard Day's Night. But
Yeah,
this
yeah.
isn't in, the sort of the Richard Lester directed, like, kind of surrealism sort of thing. It is just bits strung together. It's just, it's a lot of B-roll strung together by performances that frankly don't look like they were in Fiji at all. It's like, all right, we're on stage in Fiji. Looks a bit like Top of the Pop stage to me, that bit. I don't know though. It's they proclaim 5 minutes in, we've sold out, but they're talking about a concert. It's not about the film. It's just,
Yeah, not dignity.
yeah. The plot, such as it is, we should mention, is that because we've alluded to the Russian roulette ring that John Lovitz is running, is that in the way of like so do you remember, like, so the only like non-problematic like Little Britain sketch, just to look back at, is the one where it's Matt Lucas is the guy in the shop, like, who shouts Margaret, Margaret, he's like checking the stock.
Yes,
And
yeah.
there's a thing in that where one of the sketches is a video shop, and the David Williams character walks in and goes, I would like to watch a film where Rick Moranis and Chevy Chase are two mismatched people who witness a murder and have to go on the run. And they've just made that film. It's not even like relating back to Help or any of these pop caper films. The film they seem to have made is the film made up for that Little Britain sketch. They witness this Russian roulette thing going on, which, God, the way that this film seems to get what Russian roulette is in its first scene and then never again. Never. but it's a PG certificate film. There's only much stuff you can do with Russian roulette. But Rick and Francis say, and I wrote this down, the exact line they say as they're spying on this murder, if you can call it that, this Russian roulette game. The line they say is, we have to do something about this. It's like, we status quo have to do something about this. it's like
Where law enforcement fails, status quo must step in.
Yeah, so after they coincidentally witness this thing, they capture footage of it, but unfortunately, oh no! And this is the other line I wrote down because it's incredible. Like, unfortunately, John Lovitz also happens to be a human organ trafficker. So they're trafficking the
Yes,
organs of the victims of the Russian roulette game, and he has this line about the two old people. He's just not quite made out their faces, but he's just seen two older men watching his game. And he has this line, I'm sure they have nice fresh organs. It's, it's like, do they? Do you think?
I mean, you say rightly that there's not much you can do in a PG certificate with this plot line, but one viable solution would be not to paint yourself in the corner where your PG certificate comedy is about organ trafficking and has heavy overtones of the Deer Hunter. So that's a pretty unforced error, I would say.
Oh God, it's mad. They're nominally there to they're on tour, but they're nominally there to shoot a video as well. The song in question, the soundtrack for this film, by the way, is made up of 9 new songs and then just re-records of older songs which are scattered throughout the film. The song they're apparently there to record the video for, although they do a lot of videos for other ones, is called Living on an Island. It's a 1979 song, which Wikipedia says the composition. Lyrically, the song is about band member Rick Parfitt having to take a, quote, tax year outside of the United Kingdom and the boredom and isolation he felt while living on the Isle of Jersey. And that doesn't say anything about Bula. Sorry, I misread my notes. That says everything about Bula. About just transparent. The words tax loophole are thrown a lot when it comes around to film production. But what else does this exist for? Like, it's not. It's all. I suppose it's good natured. It's not badly made. Well, it is badly made, but it's pretty poorly edited. It's not incompetently. It is incompetently made, but it's
in focus. I think
it's in focus. Is what I'm trying to get to. I could hear what all of the actors were saying. That's what I'm getting at. But yeah,
my favourite gaff in this is where Fairbrass dunks this goon's head in like a sink which contains no liquid whatsoever, which I thought was great.
Yeah, that whole fight scene is really great.
Yeah. It is. It is.
It's not for any of the reasons a fight scene should be great. It's that it's quite funny to watch him doing this. As I said, if you want him to beat a bloke in a consciousness with a flip flop, he'll do it and he'll sell it. But you're watching
Yeah.
it's like kids playing a game, like watching the other two watching the other two fights, just clunking blokes in the head with pans. And like it's all very choreographed and it's not very mobile. And there's so much of them running from one scene to the next. To basically
Yes.
just be loosely threatened by Lovett's character, just keeps letting them escape. He just keeps sort of sleepwalking through threats, and then oh no, they've got away. They keep surprising me. There's one bit where they're like for all this is shot in Fiji. There's one bit that looks like it could have been shot on location at Centre Parks, just in pickups, where like they have to jump a train in order to get away from the bad guys. But it's one of those like Flamingo Land style, just like one of those small children's trains that they're able to catch up to, and the two goons chasing like, oh no, that's the end of us. They're on the train now. it's it's just daft.
Everything in it has such a sort of first take vibe
Yeah.
that it's the first film I've watched where you get to the outtakes over the end credits and it actually takes you about 2 or 3 scenes to realise, oh, they're
It's
the outtakes,
it's
right,
finished.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's dire from a scripting point of view. The dialogue is terrible. That's why the actors have kind of sleepwalking through it, and it's almost the unvarnished. Well, I use the word loosely. Unvarnished acting style of Parfait and Rossi that's like that actually works in his favor. Like the one attempt at a joke is just hilariously spiked by the fact that they've got no comic timing. That they're really, it's in the same way as choreography. Lovitz in one of his sleepwalking episodes brings in a doll with a bomb attached to it, and they
Yeah.
look at each other, and Rick says it's a bomb, and Francis says it's a doll, and they look at each other and not quite in sync at the same time. Go, and you have to rewind it and tell what this, and they say it's a blow up doll, and that's.
Oh
But I
dear.
laughed more at them fudging it. I laughed more at them fudging the delivery than I did the actual joke. There's it's strung together. It doesn't have any of like the surrealism of Help, like the sort of like this isn't like right, this is actually quite clever and funny. It's just
Mm.
it's just randomness. As I say, it's just holiday video. In that early bit where they're doing the donkey trail and stuff, there's even a line that's just like, all right, we have to go over here now. Oh, but it's so nice here. And it's like, I know, but we have to, they don't say we have to go be in a film, but it's almost like, right, we have to do the loose leaf stuff. Like tonally, it's a nightmare. Like that train sequence ends with them getting off and benevolently dishing out Chubba Chups to Fijian children, like it's the end of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Just where the fuck they got the Chubba Chups from that they've been carrying around with them while on the road for their lives? I don't know.
That is, now you've mentioned it, that is an ominous thing, isn't it? Because when elderly British blokes go out to Asian islands with pocketfuls of sweets, it rarely means anything good.
No, but they've got plenty of Fijian extras, but none of them taking any part in the plot. I would say not since the Truman Show has Fiji been so central and yet so remote.
Do you think if we showed this film to Dave Lister, he would give up on his dream of going to Fiji?
Yeah, there's just there's just this skein of characters running through popular culture, isn't there? Who dream of going to Fiji,
Yes.
but they know not what we have seen. They know not Bula.
The risk of running into Francis Rossi and Rick Parfitt trying to act would definitely put me off any holiday location.
Oh, the tone is so all over the place with the crime stuff. It's, again, as you say, it's just an unforced error. They don't need it in there, but it's just because there's this constant soundtrack, this constant backing of core songs. Because it's not in a way of Help where they sort of stop to do a
Mm,
performance. It's sometimes just in there as well. Like Laurie Aikman's character is called Caroline, so Caroline inevitably plays, just incessantly over one action
yes.
set piece, such as it is, whether it fits the thing or not. But there's some bits where it jars completely with the dark tone of the thing. So you've got you shite Fiji newswoman doing a news report about how there's been an incident on a bridge, like a status quo involved in a car chase. They're on the run from the
Mm.
police. And the song's just tootling away underneath, so it's going, their Fijian driver was shot dead. And the soundtrack goes, Mystery Island. it's, it's just it's it it's it was morbid curiosity before. Now I know it to be a cursed artifact, and you can't hate it. It's not. It's difficult to hate. It's not actually doing anyone
Oh,
any
it
harm.
didn't make me
It's
angry.
no.
It's just intensely weird. I mean, you mentioned the tone, and I was trying to think there just aren't many films about organ trafficking. The only nearly example I can think of. Do you remember during the development of Mission Impossible 3,
Yeah,
David Fincher briefly circled it?
yeah. There's
And the rumor was that his Mission Impossible 3 would have been about organ trafficking. And when he moved on, everyone was like, oh, I'm not surprised by that. That storyline sounds way too dark for a Mission Impossible film. And you think, was it because it's too dark, or was it because this was his script?
yeah, Fincher, big. I mean, from the way the film presents it, everyone wants to be a status quo kick. So maybe Fincher was there at one point, just went,
Maybe.
"Here you go, lads. This is it. This is gonna break. This is gonna break us out." It's God. I mean, I'm aghast. I'm agape at some of it. I've watched it. I'm still not. It's it's beyond that. It's getting in like nitpicky territory, but it left me in such a state of confusion that it would like even basic shit. Just like at one point, Rick comes out with a line about gambling, like a collective noun for gamblers is a murder of gamblers. I'm not sure, like even basic shit. It's not. It's talent or streak. You get a talent of gamblers or a streak gamblers. It's like where did that come from? Like, I know this is getting a nitpicking, but like this is the micro level of how much Bula Core like perplexed me while I was watching
Yes,
it.
that's it. I think when you were confused about the intention behind individual lines of dialogue,
Yeah,
it's like either I'm watching a David Lynch film or I'm watching a film that is just so misjudged on every level.
yeah, and that is it. It is quite spectacularly ill-conceived because I'm not really. The thing is, I'm not really sure who this is for. I guess it's PG, so
Mm.
you can drag the family if you want to use the cinema. If you want to use the cinema as a babysitter, I suppose. But that's it. But they've been. I mean, we can get onto this when we talk about the music, I suppose, when we talk about status quo in pop culture. But like, it's a mad thing of like, it's not taking itself seriously, and there's plenty of reviews that I saw that are like, it's not taking itself seriously. It's not funny either. I'd like it to be funny with that.
Yeah.
The recurring line I've seen across like a lot of professional reviews and like online reviews alike is it's not going to win any Oscars. It's like right, but that's not the low bar for a watchable film. And like I have to call this one out. This is from a professional review,
Yeah.
not this is from like from the time this came out in cinemas in 2013. This is David Steedman's review in the Hollywood News. I'm calling this out
Mm.
specifically because again, this is the only review I've seen the only thing I've seen in research maybe is a gape as the film did. Is what he said, like it's an antidote to superheroes and spaceships and this kind of thing. But the quote is, "It's not Schindler's List." It's like no, nobody wants. Nobody would expect it to be Schindler's List with status quo. What would that? Nobody wants them handing out chubba chubs in Schindler's List. It's
Bula
it's like that's
Schindler.
not the low bar for like an actual to spend £10 on a cinema ticket.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, it's that sort of thing, isn't it, that people always correctly drag Adam Sandler for.
Mm,
If you were going to make a film that is so transparently an excuse to take you and your mates, and as you point out, half of your mates' family
yeah,
out on a tropical vacation, you have to have serious goodwill with the audience. Like, even, you know, George Clooney and Brad Pitt and Matt Damon
mm,
in the Soderbergh Oceans films got a lot of reviews saying, "Oh, this is just smoke. This is just actors on a jolly." And you think if they don't have the goodwill, I'm not entirely sure Francis Rossi does.
yeah, exactly. Well, sure enough, do you want to know how much this made in its first weekend at the box office?
Oh, please tell me.
A solid from 161 sites, £255,000. It was not.
I mean, that's. That's quite a lot, isn't it, for what it
I might
is?
have to. I might have got that wrong. I might have added like 3 zeros, so that I'm going to double check that stat. I want to check that stat because even as I said it, that sounded better than it was. It's probably something like 22,500.
Well, there was a sort of cottage industry of those stories about inexplicable British films, weren't they? Of the sort of they made £52 at the box office in their first week,
Yeah,
and generally it was for films starring Danny Dyer. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, they generally made like about £100 in their first week, if memory serves. That was the sort of bar that would get people writing about how badly your film had done.
yeah. Um, right, I've got it here. So this was released in the same week as new releases. Now You See Me, The Internship. It did not place in the top 10. It made £26,000 on 166 screens.
Okay,
That's what it was. Yeah, sorry about that. I was going with
yeah.
that from memory. So yeah, that did place outside the top 10 and rapidly descended after
Hmm.
that. It was Bula in UK cinemas, apparently renamed Guitars, Guns and Paradise in some
Yes,
places as well,
with an
in national territory.
exclamation
Which
mark at
means
the
this
end.
got screened outside of the US, outside of the UK. Look, outside of, of course, the home turf.
Well, they I mean, they have this almost institutional status in Britain as just one of the ultimate bands who put their heads down and keep going forever. But their only top 40 hit in the US is also the only status quo song that I like, which is Pictures of Matchstick Men.
Yeah, it was in the course of research for this. It was like this kind of like this sort of stands apart as like, oh yeah, as you say, it's the only one that you like. I did find a lovely thing from lovely thing about like, so what inspired this kind of more psychedelic thing? It's like, oh, I was sitting in the car seat hiding from my wife and my mother-in-law. It's like, oh right, there's this quote. There it is. I mean, they've been around as long as like Ken Barlow and Cream Eggs in this country. Like, you can't think of a more aptly named band. Like they
Yes.
got the Brit Award for outstanding contribution to music 30 years ago, and then they're still going. Like, fair play to them, still playing. Like, I'm not in any way. The film is baffling to me. None of this is to be mean to the band necessarily. It's. I mean, if you want some like hot stats, they have like the most appearances on Top of the Pops of any band.
Yeah.
They had 106 performances in 42 years. Getting rolled out for like the 25th anniversary of the 2000th episode, the clip show they made the final regular episode, stuff like that. But then they were also constantly on there with like new singles throughout that
Yeah.
time as well. They've had 25 UK top 10 albums, which means over the course of like 50 years, they've been dad rock, then they've been granddad rock, then they've been great granddad rock. I'm not sure where we're at now.
Well, to big status quo is literally dad rock because I mainly associate them with my dad, who was absolutely just a massive, massive status quo
Yeah.
fan. And I don't know, I don't remember disliking them when I was young, although every time they broke into my consciousness since, it was something that eroded my patience with them. Like,
Hmm.
are you familiar with the big reorganization of Radio 1 in the mid 90s?
Yeah, I was reading about this in the research. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a great, great book by Simon Garfield, who wrote Just My Type, called The Nation's Favourite, which is an oral history of Radio 1 at that time when the controller of the station, Matthew Bannister, realised that the station that had been set up as a youth-focused, pop-focused, chart-focused radio station had just stuck with the same DJs since it was founded. And, you know, some of those DJs are still around on radio stations that cater for older listeners.
Hmm.
Some of those DJs have died. Some of those DJs, like Mike Reed, performed a song called UKIP Calypso, which is a fate worse than death. But you know, the radio Bannister realised that Radio One had drifted massively from its original mission, even though it was still getting great listenership figures. And so he replaced all of the old DJs and instituted new policies that refocused the station's output on what young people were listening to. And Bannister said that the thing that really helped them was that about a year into this process, Status Quo released a cover of Fun, Fun, Fun by the Beach Boys
Hmm.
with the Beach Boys, or at least that era's version of the Beach Boys on it. I think people who are familiar, like me, with Beach Boys history will be utterly unsurprised to realise that Michael Love has a very extended verse on this thing. And Radio 1 said, well, this has absolutely nothing to do with where we are as a station now. And they sued the station for refusing to play their records, leading to the fabulous sentence in the judge's summing up, which was, maybe Radio 1 just don't like your records. And Rossi is interviewed in The Nation's Favourite about this, and he says something like, oh, we could have gone to Radio 2, but there's a stigma towards Radio 2. It's not cool. And you think, you're a band who's been going since the 60s, releasing a cover version of Fun, Fun, Fun with a new verse by Michael Love on it, and you're worried about not being cool.
I mean, it's a publicity stunt. It's pretty good, isn't it, really? I'm just going to sue the BBC. Okay, it's his name's in the paper. It's as good a publicity stunt as Rick Parfitt has died falling off a waterfall. This will give us incredible press. It's they're just still around and just sort of omnipresent, really. They're still kind of releasing new albums every once in a while. Parfitt sadly passed away December 2016, subsequently replaced by Richie Malone. Both of them recorded.
One of the less storied casualties of 2016. Every now and then I will find someone who died in 2016. They're like, oh shit, there's Deep Cut. We forgot about that one.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it was Christmas Eve 2016, which means the next day George Michael died. So there was more of a
God.
So that could be it. But they have had an album out since then. There was one of their biggest top 10 hits in a while. That was out in 2019. They were all set to tour with that, and then the pandemic happened, which marked the biggest break in. It's a bit like, how like Ridley Scott has kind of released a film every year or every 2 years since he started, and then there was a break because of the pandemic. It's like similarly, Status Quo did not. It was the longest break in them gigging. They've come back from that though, and delighted to inform you, Graham. Book your tickets now. They'll be rocking all over Aberdeen, Glasgow, Leeds, Brighton, Bournemouth, and London in the 2022 arena tour with a very special guest, Shakin' Stevens. Book your tickets now. This has not been paid for by Court, by the way. I don't know why I'm telling you to do this. I'm just letting you know that you too could see Status Quo and Shakin' Stevens. Maybe after the show you'll go backstage and they'll unfortunately witness an incident. Oh no, it's happening again. The bizarre thing about, just to go back to the end of the film for a second, John Lovitz gets away. My question is, like, so at the end of the film, there's a police storm in. This very anticlimactic thing where Rick and Francis inevitably wind up having to play the game, having a play of Russian roulette.
Yes.
And just pretty much go by just shooting in the air and then shooting John Lovitz in the arse. And this is the nadir of his wooden acting, is he does not, you shot me in the butt. I can't believe you. Nobody shoots me in the butt, he says, with no emotion or pain whatsoever. but then gets away. And like, my question is, like, were they planning a sequel? Were they gonna?
Oh God, yeah.
Were they gonna bring him back? Were they gonna make him do this again? Was it going to be in France? Was it going to be called Je ne sais quoi? Quo vadis? What was it? What was it?
It's one of those tonal things again, though, isn't it? I can completely understand why a PG certificate caper comedy does not want to end with the villain's brains being blown out, but that's why you don't make the villain an organ trafficker. You've already crossed a pretty big line.
It's not even like he should have got his brains blown out. He's not even like brought to justice, despite the fact he's just still out there to like vaguely turn up at any core show he likes and vaguely threaten them, then ineffectually leave. The best bit in this is when he goes over to shite newswoman and goes, and goes like, "What about your kids? Like, I can get to your kids. You want to report the way things are." You know, he threatens her and like walks off. And then Matt Kennedy's character come over and goes, "That was him." Yeah, no shit. But you know, with everything is it's entirely possible they just forgot to shoot an ending, or they went,
Yes.
should we leave the ending? Should we go on another donkey ride? That'd be nice. And it's to me, it's an odd artifact because I can't even. If you're not, you know, if you're not a fan, if you're a fan of them and you're just watching it, well, look, it's Quo and they're doing stuff. If that's the
Mm.
appeal, then that's one thing. But it's like it's a shitty thing to foist on your fans, really, isn't it? Your dedicated fans. It's
Yes.
just barely a film. It's it's barely about
Yeah.
you. Like you just sort of there. You make some actors not do very much acting, doing the same three chord songs I've been hearing for ages. You know, if there's that saying about country music being three chords, and the truth, it's just three chords. It's some old bullshit for for barely 90 minutes.
It originated from a documentary which was released the year before for their actual anniversary called Hello Quo, hence
Yeah.
the title of this. I was going to watch that as research for this, and then I realised it's 2.5 hours long, which, I mean, I can go for an epic runtime when it's Martin Scorsese making a documentary about George Harrison, but I think status quo's oeuvre would struggle to justify that runtime.
I mean, there's enough of it. There's 50 years worth
I
of it. It could
guess.
just be a straight up Sparks Brothers style from beginning to end thing about the cultural heartbeat of this nation. Well, wait, it's not a heartbeat. You listen closely and it's just going, na 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 like incessantly for half a century and probably for another half a century. Why not?
Yes, perhaps. I did think of the Sparks Brothers when I saw that, but I think, like, Hello Quo came out 10 years ago. So back then, status quo would probably have been going for as long as Sparks do now. And the Sparks Brothers is still not 2.5 hours long. And like I say, I think there's a bit more to say about Sparks' career.
It depends on who you ask, doesn't it? Really, I suppose. But yeah, but no,
I guess. Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Oh God, we haven't even talked about the scuba bit. I don't want to get out of this without mentioning the scuba bit.
I am so impressed that Rick Parfitt can ham it up underwater.
Yeah, they can talk and be understood underwater. They betting on some broomsticks the fuck out of that. Look out, a shark! Go away, and it does. It's almost like it's almost like it's some stock footage. I mean, I love to imagine that. I say that like I can't imagine fans being placed by it, but I love to imagine fans watching it and go, "That's how it really happened." Which isn't say
it,
I give
it
status
does
quo
have.
fans more credit than that, but then again, it's not going to win any Oscars.
Oh no, no, of course not. It did remind me at that moment of that bit in Tim Burton's film Ed Wood,
Hmm.
where Ed's got a load of stock footage of like tanks and octopuses, and he's just ad-libbing a story that can tie them all together. And I suddenly realised that that almost certainly was the scripting process for this.
No.
Yeah, there's some really weird stuff in this. I think Caroline is a weird character to me because the first half of the movie is just sort of tittering about what an uninformed millennial she is because she doesn't know status quo.
Hmm.
And when they start playing Sweet Caroline, she's like, "Oh, they wrote a song for me." And Craig Fairbrass goes, "That was written in the 70s, you idiot,"
Hmm.
or something, maybe paraphrasing. Um, but there's something about Laura Aikman that is like quite, and I realise I'm saying this about someone who was in Keith Lemon the film, but this quite mature. And I think if you wanted to have like a millennial stereotype who just seemed like a ditzy bubblehead with a blue hair and avocado toast, you could have cast someone who's good at playing that. Whereas I don't know. I couldn't make out really what they were going for with the Caroline character.
honest answer, I don't think they know. But really, she has that. She
Yeah.
has that beat, doesn't she? Where there's a real point in there. Is where she has that beat where she's like, "Oh my god, I think I'm starting to like them." And it's like, oh,
When they're playing pictures of Matchstick Men, which I thought was well positioned because that's the only time I started to like them as well.
she's there for like the same thrill that old men get watching videos on YouTube of like young people listen to Status Quo. It's like it's just an objective truth. It's just an objective truth
Yes.
that the thing that you like is validated by if these young people would just stop trying to save their own lives and send a man who's doing Russian roulette to jail and just listen to the music, they would see what we're on about.
And then she sort of gets kidnapped and she spends the last half of the movie as damsel in distress,
Hmm.
which is a completely boring thing to happen, but mainly notable because I think Rick Parfitt's delivery of the line, if we don't do something, Caroline's going to get killed tonight, might be the least urgent sentence ever delivered.
I mean, it's somewhere in the bottom 10 just from this film. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think Lovett still pips of like with most of the things that he says. He kind of comes to life in like one scene where he delivers the film's only other attempts. You can see where it's coming a mile off again. Where he starts randomly talking about his granddad playing a Wurlitzer in a cinema, and now
Yes.
he's a trafficker because organs of all. I can't do the. I'm not doing the voice. I'm not going to try saying organs have always been the family business. It's like, oh, well, okay. How how much more of this? I mean, it's not. There's bits in it that made me laugh intentionally. As I said, the fight scene is good, like the kitchen fight scene, because it's the contrast of someone who's actually quite capable, even with limp
Mm.
choreography, and two blokes just playing at being action heroes. Because that sequence ends with them jumping through a window for no reason.
Yes, it
Other than
does.
what would you like to what would you like to do, lads? What would you like to do, Rick Francis, if you were in an action film? Like, what's their tick list of stuff? Like, mercifully, we don't get to do any like James Bond antics. It's like, oh, you can fall on this crash mat if you want.
Yeah.
Drinking in.
It's it's one of the two quaintest stunts in film history, isn't it? There's that and the guy on fire, which strangely doesn't make an appearance in this. I thought they'd tick both the boxes, but it's just Francis Rossi going through a plate of glass like the world's least satisfying director's cut of Blade Runner.
Yeah, that's what it was. They just homaging all the Deer Hunter Blade Runner. It's truly the silliest smorgasbord.
Yes.
Oh god. Bula Quo.
Bula Quo, yeah. I mean, one of its most culpable uh, crimes is that whether you want to or not, you will get the title song stuck in your head forever.
I've just separated that part of my brain out. I'm like, nope, not doing it.
Yes. Yeah, that's fair. What a shame it is that we live in a era when lobotomies are not considered medically valid.
Quobotomy.
I'm tempted to end on that. Do you have anything that can top quobotomy? Any other observations before we
Not really.
sign
This
off?
was a thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
We've watched it. I mean, it leaves me the question that I asked you at the beginning. So, is this seriously? Is this the worst film you've watched for this podcast, or is it kind of in the middle?
It's not the worst film I've watched for this podcast because we've done music by Sia.
Oh well, I respectfully withdraw the question.
I'll tell you what, in terms of pure incompetence, the worst film we've done for this podcast is Verotica, the horror film that Glenn Danzig directed,
Right.
which, um, if you have any fondness for bad movies, it's a magical experience. I mean, I made the Ed Wood joke earlier, but Verotica is genuinely the film Ed Wood would make if he was alive today.
I mean, part of me is asking so I know what to avoid. after watching. I'm hoping it's. I'm all right if it's the worst film I watch that I watch for this podcast.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
see how we go though. It's not again. It didn't make me angry. It just left me perplexed in places.
It is weird, isn't it? Because, like I say, it is the kind of indulgence that bands normally get out of the way when they're in their sort of breakthrough era.
Yeah.
There is something so strange about waiting 50 years to do your sort of pop star cash-in movie.
Hmm. Yeah, something about waiting until the 2013 14 year. Not sure.
Yes.
Yeah, can't think
But I'm
why.
glad they did. I'm glad they did it.
Hmm.
Ish.
Ish. I'm glad I've seen it. It's one of them things that's God, the thing of them just scuba diving off, seeing a shark, talking into water, coming up on shore and just singing. It's just chef's kiss. Mwah. God bless these random men.
So yes, if you enjoyed what you heard, you can donate to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Geek Show, where you'll get a monthly exclusive episode of this podcast, including that episode where me and Aidan have to sit through music, which enjoy our suffering. You'll also get my Doctor Who reviews and tons more stuff. But until next week, until next fortnight now, isn't it? That's been your lot from Pop Screen. I've been Graham.
I've been Mark. Bula. Is it goodbye as well, Salmo? Bula.